This episode may contain adult themes and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised.
Sorry.
What's the trick in making my love stick? What's the trick?
Hello, and welcome to the Film Critic and Common Man podcast. Other film podcasts might order a drink from a ghost, but we would at least order something a little pricier than this Jack Daniels. Every episode, we discuss a film from the perspective of a film critic and the perspective of a common man. We may not agree, but it certainly won't be boring. I'm your co-host, Ben Miller, dressed ridiculously. I write about films from my own site, Ice Cream for Freaks, and I'm a member of the North Texas Film Critics Association, as well as the International Film Society Critics. You can hear me guest on other pods as the David Thewlis of podcasting. I'm joined by this beautiful man, my common man co-host, the guy I certainly don't want to be stuck in a snowstorm with, especially dressed as a pirate. Jake Miller, how you doing, buddy?
Here's Johnny.
Quite literally.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the last of our October miniseries on scary movies, and we are talking. So we decided to get in the festive spirit and actually dress up.
Dude, this is gonna be tough.
Jake very definitely pointed out that I am not the Johnny Depp version of Willy Wonka, so we didn't double up on the Johnny Depp. Your beard manicurist is just top notch today. Like,
oh yeah,
I mean,
yeah. My wife, the first time I've ever been braided ever in my life. Yeah, my wife did this, and my 11-year-old daughter did my mascara and eyeliner.
Top notch, wonderful. Since we're so ridiculous looking in this podcast, we're obviously going to be talking about a very serious movie. We are talking about The Shining, finishing off our Halloween miniseries, directed by Stanley Kubrick, written by Stanley Kubrick and Diane Johnson, based on the book by Stephen King, starring Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, Danny Lloyd, and Scatman Carruthers, co-starring Barry Nelson, Philip Stone, Joe Turkel, and Barry Dennen. Opened on May 23rd, 1980. That was a wide opening, did not expand any further than that. Did a mild box office, $44 million domestic, 3.3 international, 47.3 million on a $19 million budget. So a pretty decent financial success, but kind of seen as a critical failure at the time. No major nominations from awards bodies, 2 Razzie nominations for worst director and worst actress for Shelley Duvall. That being said, the Razzies rescinded that nomination for Shelley Duvall last year. Yeah. So that no longer counts, I guess. It was an odd Rotten Tomatoes split, 82% critics, 93% audience. So the audience is way more on board than critics were. More so, I think nowadays people are more like, yeah, The Shining is the masterpiece that a lot of people think it is, as opposed to back at the time, there's like, I don't really know what this is. They couldn't really get their wrap their minds around them. So 93 audience is unsurprising, considered one of the more influential scary movies of all time. There's a lot of stuff that goes with it. As you said, the Here's Johnny line, pretty much top to bottom. So this is kind of the, like, for our Halloween miniseries, we each took 2 movies and picked 2. And then this is kind of like, oh, this is the natural thing to end on. Like, this is the go-to. Like, okay, so I imagine you probably rewatched this week. How many times have you seen the first hour of The Shining compared to the last hour and a half of The Shining? Like, when they're in the hotel and all the, breaking down the doors, all the, the
action,
bathtub, the axes, all that stuff. I've seen that probably 24 times. But the first hour and a half of this movie, it's like, man, I maybe see this 3 times.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, really. About half the movie is
almost completely foreign.
It's almost the last quarter when it really.
Yeah. I mean, even up to that point, you're just like, okay, you remember all the little parts. And all that last little bit is really memorable, but all that stuff beforehand, it's kind of just gets lost in the shuffle. I'll give a quick plot summary of what's going on in The Shining. It's based off the book on Stephen King. You are much more familiar with the book than I am. I think you actually got it the audiobook this week, or you went through it again. So we'll get into that. But based on the book, this is kind of a departure from the book. Jack Torrance, being Jack Nicholson, is going to be the winter caretaker at the Overlook Hotel in the Rocky Mountains. Not really considered. Do they ever specify specifically where it is, or in the book, do they say where? It's remote.
It's definitely remote. I think the nearest town is Sidewinder.
Okay. So
if I'm not mistaken,
it's specifically in the mountains. They close down for the winter because it's too much snow. They can't. It's unfeasible to plow. So they close every winter, and so he's like, okay, I'll come down here. I'm starting to write, and he'll be here with my wife Wendy, played by Shelley Duvall, and my son Danny. So he gets there and they're like, oh, by the way, the previous caretaker killed himself and his family, just FYI. He's going, okay. So they Jack brings Danny and brings Wendy. Wendy's really timid and quiet. Danny has all sorts of interesting issues. He's had seizures. He has a little guy that talks to him as his imaginary friend and all this kind of weird stuff. And so they go there and they meet Halloran, who is the cook. And Halloran discovers that Danny can shine, hence the name of the movie, where they can talk to each other through ESP and kind of do these type of things. And so they go and he's like, don't go into room 237. And then Danny starts to have a bunch of visions and problems with that. And as it goes along, Jack kind of starts going wackier and wackier, trying to write. He has outbursts. And all the time, Wendy's just kind of like, I don't know what's going on. Everybody's nuts in this place. And then Jack, who had been on the wagon for a couple months, starts having ghost drinks, which I don't really know how that works, but whatever. So he breaks his sobriety, and then all the ghosts kind of start playing into this and causes Jack to go wilder and wilder. Threaten, and then the ghosts essentially convince Jack, oh, you got to kill your wife and son. Because I guess you just gotta. And so Halloran gets a call essentially through ESP from Danny. It's like, please come up here, this is bad. And Wendy knocks out Jack, locks him in a freezer, and then he gets out with the help of ghosts. I guess that's the only kind of plot point where you're like, okay, that's the only part where ghosts actually have an intervention. So Jack gets out and he chases him into a room with an axe. Wendy defends herself, but Halloran shows up and Jack kills Halloran. He chases after Danny into the very large hedge maze at the hotel. Danny is able to kind of get Jack turned around. Jack gets stuck, freezes to death, and then Wendy and Danny get away in Halloran's snowcat, and that's it. It's something. It's there's a ton to get into, but first and foremost, so just having gotten the book, Stephen King hated this movie. He hated this movie. Because of a lot of things. The main thing is the version of The Shining from his book and the version in this movie are two wildly different things. So can you give a quick summary of what the difference is between the book? Like, give us a summary of The Shining from the book perspective.
Something that I heard from Stephen King, and I mean, he's made no apologies about it being.
He hates this movie to this day.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hate. I mean, and to a personal level, really, him and Kubrick don't like each other, nothing.
Yes. Kubrick very much was like, this is my thing. It just kind of, the rough outline of what your book is what I used. Yeah.
Yeah. And cause I heard like, they were like, okay, we'll bring Stephen King in to consult along the lines. He's like, I want him no part of it.
Yep. Absolutely.
So yeah. But there's always the thing whenever a movie is based on a book.
Yeah.
The book reader says the book was better.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, almost always.
Almost. Like there are
Almost.
very rare
I mean,
exceptions, like Jaws, or so. Like there are
to
sometimes.
killing a to kill a mockingbird for me
Yeah.
is one that I'm like
Yeah.
nailed it.
I know what you mean.
But
Yeah.
but this one deviates pretty wildly
Yeah.
from the book. So I've previously listened to the book
Mm-hmm.
and then just finished it this past week.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there I think something that I read from Stephen King that really stuck out to me, a criticism that I would have of this movie, is King said Jack doesn't have an arc.
No.
Like he shows up to that meeting with Ullman, the job interview.
Yeah.
He looks batshit crazy.
Yeah.
What does he do in the movie?
He
Be batshit crazy
and stays crazy. He doesn't have a.
He's a much more sympathetic character in the book. There's
from what I understand in the book, it's like I saw the same thing that King said is like the movie Jack's crazy before he gets to the hotel.
Yeah.
In the book, the hotel makes him crazy.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I would say like the movie, like Jack didn't need the hotel to go nuts.
Yeah.
I would say the book needed the hotel for him to go nuts.
Yeah.
They go way more into his history of alcohol abuse. Leading up to that, he's actually fired from the school from his position as a teacher because he assaults a student.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's just a lot more character development there, but the luxury obviously that you're always going to have with a book that you don't have in a movie is the audio version of that book was 15 hours and 50 minutes.
Yeah, so there's a lot of
you got to pack in
all that
16 hours into 2 hours.
And a half. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that makes sense. And all the in the book you understand every single motivation of every single character at every single time because you have the benefit of knowing in their heads. That's not exactly the case you can do in this movie. So,
right.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Right. And there's a lot more, I guess you hear a lot more out of Danny. I would say in the movie, I mean, he's just kind of a weird kid that's
you don't really know what's going on.
Goes into trances and stuff like that. He's a much more articulate, lively kid in the book. And Wendy is a much stronger female. She is not as weak and timid and everything as in the movie. I mean, she's a much stronger character.
So I have not seen so King, with King's backing, and because of how much he hated this movie in the 90s, they made a miniseries of this on ABC. I think a 3-part, I think an hour and a half, 3 parts, and where it's like, okay, The Shining is like the book, and with everything about it was essentially latching on to what he did. He was behind it all. And so that's the vision he wants you to see. Now, that being said, it'll never be more well known than this movie.
Right.
This movie will always be the thing. So, whenever you talk about this movie, outside of the big touchstones of the cultural touchstones of the, running through the maze, axe the door, all that kind of stuff. The
twins
one thing,
at the end of the hallway,
exactly,
the big
all
wheel
those
through the hallway.
Yes. All those type of things. The one thing that always is kind of the sticking point of a lot of people is Shelley Duvall good in this movie? And it's one of those things that it's, so I'm going to get into the behind the scenes stuff of this later, but essentially she's like at the very end of her exasperated rope this entire movie, almost without any sort of redemption. She's just running for her life and terrified. And in reality of this movie, that's essentially just what they did to her. They just made her terrified and scared. And it's definitely something that would not fly today. The way they treated Kubrick, specifically the way they treated Shelley Duvall in this movie. So what is your opinion of Shelley Duvall's performance and the character for the movie? Is how Wendy is in this movie?
Well, and obviously I'm gonna be biased towards the book.
Yeah,
I just am.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I do think it's kind of an unfair characterization. I
Yeah.
mean, she is not like that in the book.
Yeah, yeah.
And so
yeah.
they really put her in a submissive role. So, I mean, how do you really, no pun intended, how do you really shine when you're automatically placed into a very submissive role?
Yeah.
And watching the movie, I mean, there's points, whenever he detaches stuff from the radio and the snowcat, stuff like that. I look over at my wife. I'm like, she could go hook that shit back up and be right back. You know what I mean?
Whenever he breaks the radio, I was thinking he did that very gently, where you could really put that back together very easily.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
yeah.
I mean, I don't want to say her performance was good because I don't think it was very good. But I think it was difficult. I think it would be difficult for anyone to really do well in that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
circumstance.
It's not a very dynamic role. I mean, she's just meek and mildly and kind of helpless and a victim the entire time. So,
and this is another big King problem. It's like, he had the problem with Jack always being crazy, but the big thing is, it's like, man, Wendy in the book was she's a like a beauty queen. Like nothing bad has happened in her life, essentially, until she gets to the hotel. So, I mean, totally different story than how it is in this. And I think she almost dies in the book, right? She's grievously injured. Or I have not read the book. I know the general ideas of the stuff that's going on. But I mean, in this movie, I'm curious about how Kubrick kind of went into this. Like, did he go into it like, okay, this is going to be a movie about abuse and how somebody is dealing with that? And that's kind of the thing he deals with. And King's like, no, this is about alcoholism. This is that's something you want to explore. That's not what this story is about. And those type of things. I mean,
I think to me, I think Kubrick took a much more supernatural approach to it. That's something that I really like about a lot of Stephen King stuff, is that it's supernatural without just being completely overtly, like, there's still that wondering, like, are we going nuts, or is this haunted, or is this a ghost, or
and
it's just more in depth. And I think Kubrick's like, no, this place is haunted, and it makes
and I was thinking that actually, because through the whole time, like, it's all Jack and the ghost, or Danny will be like, okay, he shines and he see the twins, but that's about it. And and whatever the hell that is never really explained. Tony. But I mean, Wendy the whole time is just like, okay, these two dudes are going bananas from the jump. And she's like, why are they going nuts? I don't understand. Jack's lost his mind. Danny's doing red rum things. Tony's fingering around. Like, I don't know what's happening. And then she sees the dog and the guy. And she's like, oh, there's something weird now. That's the only time that ever actually comes in. She, until that point, just thought these dudes were nuts. Like, and it's kind of just, it wasn't overt. Like you said, King, you're just kind of like, okay, it's all in the background. Now I know that in the King book, I think the hedge maze comes to life.
So there's not a maze in the book.
Okay, they're animals, right?
But they're topiary animals.
Yeah. Okay.
They're carved like a rabbit, different animals.
Yeah.
And in one of Jack's episodes, whatever you want to call it, they come alive and like come after him. And
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, we could do a 2-hour movie or 2-hour podcast about just the difference between the books and the movie. And
Oh, absolutely.
and so I mean, there's a lot to get into. We'll kind of touch them as we go along. I want to talk about Nicholson, and specifically Nicholson this time. I always kind of think to myself, anytime I watch a movie in the 80s, like, okay, it's the 80s. How much cocaine is there? And how much cocaine is being consumed? And if Jack Nicholson is on a movie, probably a lot. And it's one of those things where you're watching Jack Nicholson do the. I also think it's separately. It's kind of mean to Shelley Duvall because her character's name is Wendy, Danny Lloyd playing Danny, Jack Nicholson playing Jack. I'm like, okay, well, everybody else just goes by their name, but regardless. But so Jack Nicholson the whole time, like, he just essentially is like, hey, you get to do the crazy Jack Nicholson thing. Remember One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where you're an actual insane person? You get to do that just meaner, and you just get to be tuned up. And the whole time, how much did you see the Joker the whole time? Like,
yeah, I mean, and it also reminded me, like, I remember when we covered this in The Departed, where, like, there's that one scene in the bar where he kind of goes nuts, and they let him kind of ad lib and
let him do the Jack Nicholson. Yes.
Yeah. And it's nutty Jack Nicholson shit.
Yep.
I mean, he's a great Joker. He's a great guy that goes nuts and kills his, tries to kill his family.
He's the Tasmanian devil. You spin him up and you let him fly. You can't, he's going to knock stuff over, but that's what he does.
Yeah.
And that's funny you say that, because that scene there are two scenes specifically where I'm like, okay, this is Jack Nicholson perfectly tuned to what's going on. That scene at the bar, because up till that point, Jack is pretty quiet and subdued. He gets to the bar and you're like, this guy's a little fun and dynamic. Like, it's like he just needed a drink, I guess. And then whenever he's stalking Wendy up the stairs, he's really just like, like those wide-eyed Nicholson all the way up. And it's Now, do you kind of do the same thing with the book? Like, okay, Nicholson is doing the Nicholson thing, but he's not doing anything that the book is doing.
Right. Yeah. So, like, I can watch the movie and be like, okay, he's doing a great job at being a crazy dude.
Yep.
But I guess the book makes it more sympathetic, so that once Jack starts really losing it,
you feel bad.
Yeah, you feel bad for him.
Okay.
And you feel bad for the family. He's a much more tragic character in the book.
Interesting. Okay.
And he's the villain in the movie.
Yeah, you're rooting for him to die. You're like, get him. You're like, every time, get him. No. Yeah, exactly. So
I mean, he's almost from the jump an antagonist.
Yeah.
He's the bad guy the whole time, besides whatever supernatural forces or whatever.
Yeah.
The book, he's a much more sympathetic character, where you're like, oh man, this poor guy down on his luck, trouble in his past, loves his wife and child more than anything, and he fucking lost it.
And there's those parts in the movie where he's in the bedroom and he's like staring off in the distance, and Danny shows up. And the whole time he's like, I love you more than anything in the world. And the whole time you're like, do you though?
I don't believe it. Yeah, exactly.
He's like, do you?
But,
I don't believe
but
this.
there are scenes, I say scenes.
Yeah.
There are parts in the book where you actually believe it.
You're like, okay. Yeah.
Like, I mean, he teaches Danny how to play roke.
Okay.
And they go out and explore the grounds kind of as a family. And
is he much more loving to Wendy in the book too? Because he really shows no affection towards her whatsoever in the movie.
Yeah, no, there's pretty graphic sex.
Oh, great.
In the book. So
okay. Well, that makes sense. I mean, so the one thing that the movie does that the book can't is it sets a tone of creepiness through verbal or non like ghostly things. Anytime there's like a high pitch or a rumbling or something like that, there's like in the undertone, you're like, something is up with this. The sound design, whenever Danny is going through on his big wheels and he's hardwood floor carpet, you're just like, man, this is what, like, why is this so tense? It's like he's just a kid riding big wheels, and it's so like the general creepiness of this movie in general. I had a list of my creepy list of the creepy things that happen in this movie. I said everything Nicholson does, essentially as soon as I think like the last hour and a half, anything he does, you're like, this is terrifying. The red and white bathroom is wildly unsettling.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about like the red and then the white marble with it, the contrast of that.
And that's also our introduction to Grady.
Yeah, introduction to Grady. Wow. Grady saying the N-word out of nowhere. You're just like, this is.
I had forgotten about that. I watched it. Well, my kids were in the room. They go, what? Both of them were like, huh?
As soon as he said it, well, like I think I coughed. I think I coughed in the middle of it accidentally. I coughed and I went, did he just say the N-word? And then Nicholson repeated it. I went, whoa, really catch you off guard. And then
I forgot about that part. I guess I've watched it on TV enough. That's probably been edited out.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and then, everything Grady says is weird. Like, you've always been here. It's like, no, I don't know you. And just like all the
you've always been the keeper.
Yeah. They needed to be corrected. The way the articulation of it. My Lloyd, the bartender, who plays such a good, like, he looks like a skeleton that somebody just put skin on. He's so hollow and creepy. Obviously the ladies in the tub, which again, I'd always seen this movie on TV, and I'm like, boy, she is really naked. Like, and then going to obviously the old lady in the tub, you're like, that's a lot. The twins being there, actually they're not twins, they're 8 and 10, but they're dressed identical. They look like twins. So come play with us, Danny, all that kind of stuff. And then the guy and the dog, which is the guy and the dog part. Is that in any way in the book? Do you know what I'm talking about? The guy and the dog?
No.
Okay. So Nicholson knocks down the door, chops down the door. Wendy hits his hand. He goes downstairs. So Danny is trying to run away. Nicholson or Jack goes down and kills Halloran, and Danny's running away. Wendy goes up into the living quarters, and she turns a corner, and there is an open door of one of these rooms. Oh, and it's a guy in a dog costume, assuming filleting a guy, a businessman, and you're just like, what the hell is this?
No, I don't. I don't know what that was.
It's just Kubrick wanted to be weirder than he already was, or we had to get Wendy on board with the fact that there is ghosts and we have to get out of this place.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I remember that's one of these aspects of. I mean, there are parts of this movie where I go, what, like. And don't get me wrong. I mean, even in the book,
yeah.
I mean, like, Stephen King can be a weird bastard.
This is a man who wrote a kid orgy in a sewer. So I mean, you have to take all that kind of stuff with a grain of salt. But at the same time, like, that's a level of, like, there's still zero explanation for why it happens. There's zero, none at all. So whenever you think of, like, I don't really necessarily think of this as like, this is a scary movie. I'm terrified. The whole time I'm just unsettled. I'm never like watching this comfortably and enjoying myself. The whole time you're just like,
right,
something's wrong.
This ain't right.
Yeah, exactly. What's your lasting memory of this movie in general? Like, what's the thing you think about? Do you think about Nicholson being nuts? You think about the hedge maze, the axe to the door, all those kind of things, because there's always, like, I always think of the very small, like, silly things, like the guy and the dog. The fact that Halloran has naked paintings of
Oh,
women
yeah.
in his room,
Huge afros.
huge afros. Like why is that the case? I will
Mhm.
never forget Grady saying the N-word ever again. Like
Mhm.
that's the like you know, the old woman, young woman. What's the thing that kind of sticks with you as far as like this lasting image of this movie?
Well, I am a very, very, very frequent stayer, a patron of hotels and
Yes.
motels.
Yes.
Usually mine aren't the ones I stay at, they're not even the ghosts want to be there. Like even if you die in there, no, they get out.
And not to
That's-
mention 95% you open and you're outdoors. You open your door and you're outdoors.
Yeah, for the
Okay.
motels and
Okay.
stuff.
I
Yeah.
figured. Okay.
But so anyways, the thing that I think of is the carpet in the hallways.
Yes, that pattern.
The carpet,
Yes.
that kind of retro deco
Yeah.
kind of thing that, you know, from like 70s into 80s. I think
Yeah.
this is set in 1980. So just that kind of look
Yeah.
sticks out to me. Like, have you ever stayed at the Skirvin in
Yes, I
Oklahoma
have
City?
stayed at the Skirvin at Oklahoma City, a actual haunted hotel, according to a lot of people. Yes, I have stayed there. Yes.
Yeah, but it's a great place.
Yeah.
So
Great
I'm
hotel.
not
Yeah.
like, if you're staying in OKC, like on vacation, not just work, like you got, man, stay at the Skirvin. They've got the red piano lounge downstairs. It's awesome.
Right in the middle of downtown Oklahoma City. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree. Yeah.
But there's like a lot of writers used to stay there and do their writing there. And so I mean, there's lots of stories, and yeah, a lot of haunted and ghost stories there. But the carpet, and
Has that
if
kind of.
they're smart, it was intentional.
Yep.
If not, it was a good accident.
It was
But
yeah.
you look down that hallway and you're like, I sure as fuck hope there ain't two little girls in blue dresses down here.
I turn the
I'm
corner,
just trying to get some mice.
It's like, I just want to see if they have a payday in the thing. Like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the true story, I heard a story about this. So Kevin Durant, the basketball player, played his first, 8 seasons or something in Oklahoma City, but he lived in Oklahoma City, so he never needed to stay in the Skirvin because that's where the opposing teams stay whenever they play the Oklahoma City Thunder. So the first time he left Oklahoma City and came back as an opponent, they stayed in the Skirvin, and he's a veteran guy and had his own room, but he made another teammate come in and sleep with him in the room because of how terrified he was. So, I mean, you get those stories like that. You get so like that stuff is cool to me. I want to stay in a haunted hotel. That being said,
Yeah, I love it.
there's a weird sense of claustrophobia with this movie, despite how gigantic everything is. Why is everything so claustrophobic whenever, these huge cavernous rooms? And I think that's, the sound design, again, plays a big part. Every time he clicks a bit on the typewriter and all the way through, like it just, it's so like unnerving across the entire time. Yeah.
And they, I mean, very early on, like during the interview, what's his name? Ullman warns him about cabin fever.
Yes.
And cabin fever is mentioned over and over.
Yep.
And it is as well in the book. And it's like, you're in this massive luxury resort. Like,
in theory, you should be fine.
But
yeah.
I mean, everyone's just confined enough, and
it's
the
funny.
weather plays a huge part in
it's
that.
Funny. It's funny having it now after 2 years ago, whenever everybody was literally stuck indoors with everybody for a long period of time. Like it kind of plays off that immediately. So the cabin fever is an aspect of it. It's one of those things, like you could, after a while, you could almost talk yourself into this, like, okay, maybe this kid's just epileptic and Jack is having cabin fever And then it, like you said, it kind of confirms like, okay, no, there's ghosts. Like, okay, there's ghosts.
Yeah.
So the ending of the movie,
Mm-hmm.
Jack is frozen outside. They go off in the snowcat, and it focuses on a picture from 1921, I think,
Yeah.
of the people at the hotel having a party, and right in the front is Jack Nicholson. So
Mhm.
you're like, okay, what does that mean? Cut to black. You have no idea. So, I mean, do you have an interpretation of it based off of what's going on in the book, or it's so detached from the book? Do you have a separate interpretation, or?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I was fixing to say,
Okay.
is that really obviously I'm making comparisons between the book and the movie, but I think two things have to be true at once, and I can like the movie and I can like the book, but kind of think they ain't the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Separate,
I
but
kind of
equal,
have
weirdly.
to,
Yeah.
I have to kind of judge them on their own merits.
I agree.
But
Yeah, that's a
like,
good way to put it.
oh, what was that? Oh, so the ending in the book, Jack basically kind of self-destructs the hotel.
Boiler explodes.
Yeah, he lets the boilers go, and that's referenced a bunch.
It's almost a redemption arc. Like he's like, okay,
yes,
I've gone too far. There's no coming back from this. So okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a good thing in the book. Like, whereas the movie, you see him frozen at the end, and you're like, oh, good, you crazy bastard.
Yeah.
But in the book, it's more like, oh man, he knew that's what he needed to do to get rid of himself and get rid of whatever's haunting this establishment and let his wife and kid go. So, like I mentioned earlier, Jack is a much more sympathetic, dynamic character with so much more arc than in the movie.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's a really interesting. I'm not going to say that I know. Like, okay, so I want to talk about Kubrick for a little bit, because just kind of the way he does things in general. Like, he's a very specific type of director. Early on in his career, he had a lot of he was much more mainstream kind of way he did things, and kind of living in the studio system and making straightforward movies. You ever seen Paths of Glory?
No.
It's a World War I movie. It's with Kirk Douglas. I think it's 81 minutes. It's about I think it's World War I officers who are they're court-martialed, and essentially they're scapegoated, and it's discovered that they didn't do anything wrong, but they still kind of have to take the blame. It's an exceptional movie from what I've heard. It's on my list of things to watch. I know it's short. I need to watch it. But that was a conventional, straightforward movie. And he made Spartacus, another movie we've definitely seen. Kirk Douglas again. It's a very, swords and sandals epic, kind of following off the book, very straightforward. Then he kind of gets into, okay, I'm a brand of Kubrick now. Kubrick is what I am. So whenever Kubrick movie, you have a certain expectations. He makes Dr. Strangelove, a dark comedy, doing a lot of different things. And then he makes the most Kubrickian movie ever, 2001: A Space Odyssey. A movie where from the jump, you're just like, I don't know what's happening. It's really cool to watch. I could sit here and interpret it for 4 hours, but I don't know what's going on. And you have to essentially look at that in those ways. And from then on, every movie of his is like that. Like A Clockwork Orange, same thing. Like, okay, I got the deep themes, but something's going on that I don't understand. Even Full Metal Jacket, one of a pretty straightforward movie, but at the same time, you're like, there are layers to this onion that I'm not getting.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I would agree. And there's a lot of cultural references that I think come from Kubrick films.
Yeah.
That I mean, kids nowadays, if they go, here's Johnny.
Yeah, they don't
think of Johnny Carson.
No, nobody knows it's from Johnny Carson. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of things from Strangelove and
Clockwork Orange, 2001,
Yes.
Full Metal Jacket. I mean, Full Metal
I
Jacket.
think there's a lot
Yes.
of cultural references that have just become a part of the culture.
Even I Am Spartacus. Absolutely. It's just a part
Absolutely.
of it. Yes.
I am
yes.
Spartacus.
Yes.
I am Spartacus.
Yes.
I am Spartacus.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Kubrick films are yeah, that's a good way. I like how you put it, is that Kubrick just became Kubrick and
Yes.
kept being Kubrick.
Yes. And he didn't change until he died. Like he's like, oh, I'm even gonna make a movie with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, the most popular popular couple in the world. Cool. It is going to be nothing like you expect. It's going to be 2 hours and 40 minutes. There's going to be graphic sex scenes in the middle of it. Like,
Was that Eyes Wide Open or
Eyes Wide Shut? Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
That was the last movie he
that
made.
was
Yeah. So the other thing,
it's pretty bad when you're a teenager and you're seeing graphic sex scenes and you're like, this movie's awful, and you shut it off.
there's and you're just like, okay, even for Kubrick, you're just like, yeah, like you said, as a kid, you're just like, I will try anything to just like,
If I can see a boobie, then
absolutely. And then you're in this and you're just like, this is too
never
weird.
mind.
I'm too weird to be aroused. Yeah, exactly. Like, so
I'll go look at a J.C. Penney catalog. Thanks.
the other thing he does is he is notorious for take after take after take after take after take. So
Really?
he does
Shoots a ton.
ton. So Scatman Carruthers, who plays Halloran, he was 71 when this movie got made, and he's a really good friend with Jack Nicholson. And Nicholson had to keep stepping in, being like, "We can't do 40 takes for this 70-year-old man. Please cut it back to whatever." So they get done with filming The Shining. After this, Scatman Carruthers goes and makes a movie with Clint Eastwood called Bronco Billy. And Clint Eastwood is the exact opposite. He's like 2-3 takes most. And he said the first time that Carruthers was ever on a scene with Eastwood, he takes like 2-3 takes. He's like, "That's good, cut it," and he breaks out in tears.
Yeah, he's like, thank God.
At the same time,
Two old men just wanting to get shit done.
Yes, and I think at the time, Clint Eastwood was probably 50, but like, yeah. So and Angelica Houston was living with Jack Nicholson at the time of this filming, and they said every day he'd wake up, go do filming all day, come home, not say a word, straight to bed, fall on the mattress and be asleep before she could notice he was down. It's like every single day he would just come down and pass out essentially from the long hours. Shelley Duvall got to the point where they said she would fall into nervous breakdowns and started losing her hair because of how badly this thing was being treated. The exact opposite is with the boy, Danny Lloyd. Kubrick treated him with kid gloves until he watched the movie 4 years later. He didn't know it was scary. He thought it was a drama. So, I mean, it's the thing he does. Supposedly
he's a driver, huh?
He's a driver,
slave driver.
And I mean, he does it for purposes. Yeah. It's like, so David Fincher, which we talked about in 7, he's also notorious. Like, I'm going to do 60 things of this, but what he'll do is like, he wants to like the reason he does it, he wants to turn off all the actorly instincts these people have. He's like, turn it off. It's what I want from you. Kubrick is more of like a method director. He's like, oh man, you really fit into that one. That's wonderful. Sorry. That was great. No, Kubrick's more of a method
What's
director.
up?
He's like, I'm going to go in here and I am going to, if you're supposed to be terrified, I'm going to scare the crap out of you. And if you can say one thing about Duvall, that's it. You're like, man, she plays terrified really, really well.
She does. I mean, even like whenever we looked it up on whatever streaming service we did, like the shot is her just screaming in terror as he busts down the door. Yeah. She
just like,
she looks scared as shit. I'll give her that. Yeah,
I agree. They've made documentaries about the making of this movie. They've made all sorts of stuff about the making of this movie. It's probably the most famous behind the scenes stuff of any sort of movie. So, I mean, by all means, go out there, get an idea of the kind of stuff that goes on. Go there. You can read the book. You can watch this movie. You can watch the You can watch the miniseries. Steven Weber and Rebecca De Mornay, a beautiful woman playing Wendy at the time. So I mean, much different than that. And then they made a sequel.
Yeah.
Then they made a sequel called Doctor Sleep. I think it came out 3 years. You've seen it? Have you seen it?
I listened to the audiobook.
Oh, you listened to the book.
And my wife and I saw it in theaters.
Oh, okay.
Actually.
Wow.
One of the few films that I get excited enough that I'll go to a theater for.
Nice.
So
I have not seen Doctor Sleep. I know a lot of people love it.
It would help if you are more familiar with the book. I would say
it's more book appropriate. Like it's more book adjacent.
Yeah.
It's taking
book adjacent.
Okay, that makes more sense. Okay, so yeah,
yes.
you can check out all those. Read the book of Doctor Sleep. So I mean, it's a much different type of movie. Like it's
very
sequel to The Shining. No, not exactly The Shining. Like it's okay.
Completely different. I mean, Ewan McGregor does a great job.
The adult Danny.
And yes, he's the adult Danny. I would recommend this. I would recommend watching Doctor Sleep, but whenever we watched it, literally 2 couples stood up and left during one scene.
Oh yeah.
There was a little boy being tortured to death.
Really early, right?
It's fairly, yeah.
It
is rough.
Yes,
it is not for the faint-hearted.
I've heard about this as well. Yeah.
It was tough. But I mean, it was really good. But
nice.
Yeah.
Okay, buddy, it is time for my favorite segment. It is Pull for a Dumbass. Every week I go through the filmography of a filmmaker and put Jake's cinematic knowledge to the test. This is our second Jack Nicholson movie, so I think it is a good time to bring out the filmography of Jack Nicholson. But selected filmography, I think you'll be surprised at how little you know about the movies that Jack Nicholson has been Oscar nominated for. He is the most nominated male of all time. He has been nominated for 12 Academy Awards for the last 50 years, almost 55. So he has been nominated 12 times. He has won 3 times. Was not nominated for The Shining. As I said, The Shining got no Oscar nominations. So I'm going to quiz you on Jack Nicholson's Oscar nominations. I'm going to guess you have seen 5 of 12. I think 5 is a good number. Starting with his first Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor in a movie that nobody really saw coming, and then is just one of the touchstones of its time. 1969's Easy Rider.
Oh yeah,
you have. I've never seen it.
I've seen it. Yeah, I didn't love it.
Yeah,
I mean that's when I was getting into motorcycles initially.
Yeah.
That's the reason I watched it.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
it's very hippy dippy. It's very.
Oh yeah.
It's live free type of the Dennis Hopper directed. But it was a culture touchstone at the time. Him kind of being the outsider of it. So that was really, he popped out of nowhere in that movie, got an Oscar nomination, and then it was almost immediately a star. The very next year got his first Best Actor Oscar nomination for the film 5 Easy Pieces. It's pretty solid. It's kind of like a counterculture movie. Oh, this is so dumb.
I agree.
No, it's an interesting movie. It's he's kind of like he's a young guy, and everything that happens to him is kind of like, man, this is the world's trying to beat me down. It's very much of its time, but he's really good in it. Famously wants to order a chicken sandwich without chicken, and gets in an argument with a waitress. Okay, how about this? This is the only one where I'm like, there's a chance here, and I think if you saw it, you really like it. From 1973, playing the sailor man, signal man, badass Budunsky, The Last Detail. Him, it's a really This is not going to get old either.
Mm.
He plays one of two Navy men transporting a young seaman to prison. The young seaman is Randy Quaid. They're essentially like, we got to take you to prison across country. So we're going to do that. Him and Otis Young. And then along the way, they're like, hey, we might as well give him a good time. And they just kind of like have fun across the country as these kind of ne'er-do-well sailors. It's a good movie. I really enjoy it. They made a sequel to it a couple of years ago with Steve Carell and Bryan Cranston. Called Last Flag Flying. Good movie. I would suggest The Last Detail. Probably he didn't win the Oscar in 1974, but he got his 4th Oscar nomination, his 3rd Best Actor nomination. Probably I think it's probably his best performance. It's one of his most memorable as Jake Geddes in Chinatown.
Yes.
Yes.
It's been a long time, but yes, I saw it.
I mean, there's a lot to get into with that movie. It's really good. It probably utilizes his persona the best and reels him in pretty well. I really like it as well. How about the epitome of kind of the wound up Tasmanian devil persona, getting his first Oscar win in 1975, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Love it.
Love it, yes.
Absolutely love that movie.
Yes, I agree.
It's
R.I.P. Louise Fletcher died a couple weeks ago. That Nurse Ratched.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she passed away a couple weeks ago. Just I think as of this taping, I think like 2 weeks ago exactly. But I mean, exactly, all timer. It's everything about it is almost perfect. Like it's an exceptional movie. The craziness of Nicholson is deployed to such a perfect degree in this movie. Is like, oh, he's kind of insane, but at the same time, he's likable, and it's perfect.
Well, yeah. And he's playing the system and meets, like Chief is playing the system. Yeah.
Great.
No,
movie.
it's great. We could, we might have to do that.
We might have to do One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I agree. Okay, so now we're getting into the 80s, which is I have low expectations for almost all of these. A movie famously, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. Our mom has walked out of 2 movies in her lifetime. One is Night of the Living Dead, and the other is this movie, Reds.
Oh, not I've heard of it, but I think just because of what my mom said about it,
she hated it so much. Watched it. I haven't either, for the exact reason. I was like, well, I've been waiting.
I heard it was terrible.
It's about American communists. So I mean, yes, I mean it's a Warren Beatty movie. Beatty being full of himself at the most, that the kind of what he did. Makes The Shining. So it makes The Shining the year before Reds in 1980. That was 1981 was Reds. 2 years later, wins his 2nd Oscar, his first supporting actor Oscar, a movie I just watched for the first time ever, Terms of Endearment.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
I'm not surprised. It's one of those movies like whenever you're a kid and it's on TV, it's a girl movie. Like it's a daughter and her sister, a woman and her daughter. Like, why would that be something that attracts to us? It's really well done. It's kind of odd toned. Like it kind of goes all over the place. It's not like just the weepy drama you kind of expect. He plays an astronaut, a former astronaut, a womanizing astronaut that is kind of perfectly suited to his style again. So that makes sense why he's in it. He's good in it. I'm not necessarily sure he's like, oh yeah, this guy deserved his Oscar, his 2nd Oscar for this, but it was more like, hey, Jack Nicholson supporting. Yeah, cool. And the movie was a big hit. 2 years later, getting yet another this point. This would have been his 1, 2, 3, 4. This was his 8th Oscar nomination. A movie I doubt you've even heard of, Prizzy's Honor. No. So this is, as I said, he used to live with Angelica Houston. She is in this movie. That was her Oscar win. I have never seen it. I've heard very conflicted things. Some people love it. Some people hate it. So I don't really know. This is more into his like, okay, this is the Jack Nicholson we know of in the 80s in front courtside of Laker games. Another movie you definitely have never heard of. One of Meryl Streep's Oscar nominations. He was nominated as well. They play homeless people. They're a movie called Ironweed.
No.
Haven't even heard of it, I bet.
Haven't heard of it.
I'm not surprised. It's on my list of things to watch. I don't know really many people who have seen it and have great opinions of it. Mostly just the people who are like, yeah, Meryl Streep fans. They're just like, yeah, it's one of the that she got nominated for. It's not necessarily all that good.
That sounds interesting, though.
It is interesting. Yeah. So it was it's from 1987. It's based in the Great Depression in the 30s. Nicholson and Streep are homeless and just trying to make things work. And it's I really don't know anybody who's seen it. I need to. It might be one I need to pop on there.
What was that called?
Ironweed.
Ironweed.
Yes.
All right.
So he makes Batman in 1989. Famously, not only does he make Batman, he makes the financial decision to, instead of taking a flat salary, he takes a cut of the profits. At the time, nobody knew Batman was going to be successable. I think he made something north of like $70 million off of Batman because he took a cut of the profits. Actually was ahead of Michael Keaton in the billing. So at that point, he can do whatever he wants to do.
Yeah.
And in 1992, he decides to take a supporting role, gets another Oscar nomination, his 10th Oscar nomination, his third supporting actor in A Few Good Men.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's even if, I have definitely seen all of A Few Good Men, definitely. But I don't know if I have seen all of it in one sitting. Like, I've seen his courtroom scene 1,000 times. I've seen the last 20 minutes 1,000 times. I've seen little bits with Kevin Bacon or little bits with Demi Moore or something like that, or and then the Tom Cruise stuff and the like. But I'm not sure. Like, I don't think of it as a coherent movie. I think of the last scene with him, and that's the thing I think of generally. Like, wins his third Oscar in 1997, the Titanic year, in a comedy, essentially playing up to his curmudgeonly stature at that point, as good as it gets. Yes. Another kind of odd, like tonally weird movie. Like, it's kind of funny but weirdly dramatic. Different points, like really like oddly long. Like, but I still enjoy it. It's on a lot. So
it's good. It's all right.
It's fine. Yeah. So at that point, he has 3 Oscars, 11 nominations, and everybody's like, okay, it's Jack Nicholson. And he's just like, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And you're like, yeah, that's what you do. In 2002, so we talked about Scorsese kind of tempering like Wahlberg back to what he did. In 2002, he's in this movie called About Schmidt. And this is his last Oscar nomination. I doubt you had seen it. About Schmidt. Okay, so in this movie, it's directed by a guy named Alexander Payne. And essentially it's like, okay, Nicholson, you're all wild and out there and all that kind of stuff. We're going to make you dial all that back as much as you can. And you're just a turd, an old turd who is trying to get through life and making all the wrong decisions. And he's really, really good. Almost probably won a 4th Oscar, almost. Lost to Adrian Brody in The Pianist. Probably got close to another Oscar nomination on The Departed. Hasn't kind of is semi-retired since 2010's How Do You Know? He is, let's see here. He is currently 85 years old. So happily retired on the sidelines. I don't know about you. I don't know how he's alive. Like this guy used to party with John Belushi, and what is in his blood to make him alive is beyond me, because still chugging along at 85, and the amount of stuff that has gone through his system, I cannot imagine.
Well, I mean, I know I'm not making it to 85. So.
Oh, you're so pessimistic. All right, so that
realistic.
A little better, actually. I think I nailed it. Actually, 5 out of 12. So that's it's not surprising. Like, I didn't expect you to see Reds or Prizzy's Honor or Ironweed. Like, it's like you hit the ones you're supposed to hit. And I was looking at it, I'm like, okay, what are the movies like he's known for? And his movies that he is like specifically like, okay, those are the ones he's known for, are essentially the ones that everybody knows. It's Chinatown, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Shining, Terms of Endearment, maybe like Batman, Few Good Men, And then like and later in life, you're like, okay, anger management or something's got to give, more playing into his persona than it is anything else. Yeah. So I mean, it's not really surprising.
I mean, it kind of seems like his later roles have been more tuned to his age.
Yes,
I guess,
much more so. Yes.
Yeah.
Something's got to give specifically. He's an old guy. You like Something's Got to Give?
Yeah, I like it.
It's not bad. Yeah. I like. There's a lot about it. I like a lot of the supporting cast and all that kind of stuff. And old guy sleeping with younger woman. It's right up his.
And then
alley.
he did Bucket List.
Yeah.
Kind of another one where he's playing the old.
I'm an old
dude.
guy. Yeah. I'm a cranky old man. He hasn't made a movie where he acts like he's in any way young since As Good as It Gets. Like, like he's like, oh, I'm an old curmudgeon ever since 1997. So I mean playing into the role. So that works. Yeah, makes sense. So yeah, 5 out of 12, not bad, buddy.
All right. Well,
All right, buddy. Each episode, instead of me steering the conversation, Jake peppers me with questions that I must answer truthfully. Sometimes it's trivia, sometimes it's not. Do you have the golden ticket, Jake? Where am I? Is it that time?
I don't have a golden ticket. No.
But,
You're in the hot box, dude.
I got it. I'm in it. I'm ready.
All right. Are you ready? All right.
Probably
so I kind of thought I'd mix it up a little bit this week and kind of go more kind of like how your poll for a dumbass is.
Okay.
But
okay.
I mean,
I got it.
First off, my most important question. So Doc or Danny.
Yes.
And Dick Halloran, they established The Shining, that they both shine.
Yes.
Over a bowl of ice cream.
Okay.
So what's your favorite flavor of ice cream?
You always want to kind of default to be like, oh yeah, it's like got to think of this kind of wild, crazy ice cream, but it's just going to default to cookies and cream. It's not.
That's fine.
It's like you can't screw these things up. Like
it's Oreos and ice cream.
It's Oreos and ice cream. It's too easy to get wrong. Like it's. There's a reason it's there, and it will always be there because it is wonderful. It is never not bad. You can't screw up cookies and cream ice cream. You can't. Yeah, absolutely. It's cookies and cream.
Hey, I'm absolutely with you.
I do. I give a shout out to mint chocolate chip. I do love mint chocolate chip. It's. I don't think you're much of a mint guy, but like
no. Mint.
Now we are Texas boys, so Bluebell is the thing.
Now
Bluebell has a flavor called Cookie Two Step, which is a combination of cookies and cream and cookie dough, and it is spectacular. But
it's hard to find.
It's hard to find. Yeah, but I mean
it is.
But I'm not going to count that as like, oh, that's my go-to ice cream. It's like, no, that's not realistic. You're not going out in the world and finding that. So that's the one. Yeah.
All right. So now I'm actually going to test your movie knowledge here.
I'm ready. This is exciting.
Okay. So can you name, let's put it this way. How many Stephen King novels do you think have been adapted to film?
Okay, so let's see. Just off the top of my head, film. When you're talking about film, you're talking about theatrical releases, because he does a lot of TV.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think movies.
Okay. So
as far as I know.
Okay, so like we wouldn't count The Stand like necessarily.
I don't know what that is. So
exactly. So okay. So let's say I'm going to say he has had. Let's go with 10 of his movie, 10 adaptations to his movie. Because off the top of my head, it's like Shining, Green Mile, Shawshank Redemption. Those are the three bigs. Like you're like those are shot, and then I'm sure there are little ones like Thinner and Langley or something like that along the line. So what I bet you it's some stupid It 1 and 2 and twice and what it's a stupid
60 films.
60 films.
60 films based on his books. Yeah.
Jeez. I'm probably not thinking of half of them. Like,
Yeah, no, I mean, you look it up and you're like, holy crap, I forgot that came from, I mean, Pet Cemetery.
oh yes, Salem's Lot,
Um,
Firestarter, Misery.
yeah.
Man, I can't even think of these. Let's see. Obviously, Doctor Sleep. I didn't even think of that. The Dark Tower. They made us, and a lot of it, and even the ones that aren't movies, they made into TV shows, like
Yeah.
Mr. Mercedes, and like I said, The Stand, and they usually make them into Cell. All these type of Lazy Story. They make them all into miniseries and stuff like that. That's incredible. That's a
Yeah.
really surprising amount. Oh, don't forget the all-time terrible TV movie,
Tremors.
not based off of a book, not based off of a book, based off a idea of his own that was not based on a book, directed as well. Maximum Overdrive with Emilio Estevez. I think
I've heard enough. Emilio Estevez, I'm out.
Okay, so Maximum Overdrive, it's a comedy horror film. I guess it is a short story. So in other words, all machines, cars, trucks, radios, arcades, vending machines come sentient and try to kill everybody.
God.
It is real bad. It's one of those things you're like, well, if he wasn't on cocaine, it at least explains if he's on cocaine, at least it explains his motivation. It's a terrible movie. Yeah. So that's surprising. 60 something. Wow. That's
yeah. Okay. But, and I mean, he has got tons of bangers. I mean,
yes,
you just mentioned about a bunch of them, but there's only been one Oscar winner.
Yes. And
out of any of his films. So which one is it?
Oscar winner, like it won an Oscar.
Yep.
Misery.
Yep.
Kathy Bates won Best Actress.
Best Actress. Yeah.
Now I don't know if you have this piece of trivia. Can you tell me the one movie that Stephen King thinks is the perfect film adaptation of his work?
Stephen King.
So he has the opinion that is like, this adaptation of my book is perfect.
Maybe Shawshank?
Stand By Me.
Oh, really?
Yes, he loves Stand By Me.
That's another bang.
It's another one you forget about. Like
yeah, exactly. That's
it's because there's not the supernatural elements, and you just forget about it. Like it's not the Stephen King type Misery. Like
you think Pet Cemetery.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's essentially the big four of Misery, Stand By Me, Shawshank, and Green Mile, where you're like, okay, well, Green Mile has the little bit of the mysticism to it, but generally those are pretty straightforward stories that aren't necessarily like, oh, aliens or something else pops up or something like that. Like,
and I mean, like Shawshank, there's no supernatural.
Nope, none at all.
You know.
And Misery isn't either. It's just a crazy lady. Yeah. Stand By Me. It's just kids, and yeah, exactly. Thank God for Corey Feldman.
Oh yeah. All right. So let me see. Okay, so what out of all those bangers we just mentioned? I mean, obviously he's got plenty to choose from, but what is your favorite movie that's based off of Stephen King?
It's easy to default to it, and there's a reason it's easy to default to it. It's Shawshank, because it's
so fucking good.
It's so good. It's just it's almost it's gotten to the point where it was so liked for so long, it got overrated. At least in critical circles, people are like, "Oh, Shawshank." Pulp Fiction's been the same exact thing. Like they're like, "Oh no, too many people are on board with Pulp Fiction. I can't like it." And it's like, yes, you can. It's there for a reason. It is that's a desert island movie for you. Like, okay, you have 3 movies you get to pick from. One of them's definitely Shawshank, right? Yeah, it's yeah, that makes sense. It's there for a reason. It's going to be a classic for a reason. I think it's the number 1 rated movie on IMDb. It's there for a reason, and it's going to be.
I mean, just unbelievable. Unbelievable. I mean, just great.
Yes, absolutely.
If you got a problem with that, then I'm not friends with you.
I get it.
Okay, so we kind of touched on this earlier. Well, I'm going to skip that one because you already kind of looked it up. I was going
Okay,
to see how many Stephen King movies you could name, but
Okay, yeah. So I mean, but I'd get all the like creep shows and wrong, like, but yeah.
okay. Well, shit. Let's see what else I got here. Okay, so this movie, it's based in 1980. It's set in 1980,
Yes.
I should say. So there is something called anemoia, which is a nostalgia for a time that you didn't
Yes.
experience
Yes.
yourself.
Yes.
So what out of this movie makes you nostalgic? Like the clothing or
You know, it's funny. I had almost brought
being
this up
able to smoke inside or
I almost brought this up before because you were talking about like the carpet and all that kind of the pastiche they had. The kind of weird obsession that everybody kind of had a little bit for like we have to have the Native American or Indian rooms, like that kind of like
Southwest motif.
fake Indian, like
Yeah.
it's like, oh, we're in Colorado, we're nothing but white people. We have to have the the
You
chevron
look like
patterns.
Dumb and Dumber whenever you walk into the bar,
Yeah.
you know, and he's got like the
Yes, exactly. Or the great example is the blanket over your shoulder.
oh,
I mean, well, I mean, like the
that's
checker.
actually
I'm aware of
from-
that. I know that.
this,
I'm
this
not
is made in Mexico.
I'm not discounting that, but I'm saying like
Okay.
that
Well,
type
you
of
just made fun of me.
that type of past that kind of like
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
we're in
No,
this,
I get it.
we're in the Indian country of the United States, but we knocked them out. But we're going to still be like, yeah, this is the Navajo room or something like that. Like there was
Right.
so much of that all over the
Yeah.
Southwest, at least
Yeah.
growing up. And I always think of that as something particularly 80s and 90s.
Yeah. And I do think there was a lot of, just, going after tourists,
Yeah.
that are, someone from, West, someone from Ohio or something. They go to New Mexico. They probably want to bring back.
I got a bolo tie
Whereas-
and a turquoise bracelet. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas like down here, it's a blanket, but they'd be like, this was made in New Mexico.
Yeah.
And I need sterling silver and turquoise and this is an arrowhead and stuff like that.
Is it?
Yeah,
really?
I get
Is it
what
an
you
arrow?
said.
Yeah. That is always the thing I always come to because you kind of go in, you're just like like a white Indian threw up in here. Like it's
Kachina dolls.
Made
by a guy named Ted.
Yeah, that brings me back specifically. Like I'm a little kid and we're being brought around to these places and we're just like, well, okay, this is and I, especially you were way into Indian culture when you were kids. You were all the way in. So I mean, that was something that was always like, hey, that's the thing. So that's what I always think about. So what's the word? That's a really cool word.
Anemoia.
That's an awesome word. So it essentially
Amanoia.
Okay.
Amanoia.
So something that transports you through nostalgia.
Yeah, so I mean, it's the same thing. Like you can watch "It's a Wonderful Life," and be like, the good old days.
Yeah,
we were never fucking there. You don't know.
We were around in the 30s. Yeah, exactly. So, is there something in this movie that specifically gets you?
Just landlines.
Oh, that's not. I didn't even think of this. Like ham radios. There's one scene. The first time Danny ever sees the twins. He's in a game room and there's a payphone in a phone booth in the room. And I'm just like, wild. Like it's insane. Stuff like that. Yeah. It's always,
I love it. I mean, like I said, I mean, I spend 5 out of my 7 days of the week in a hotel or a motel. And I can still tell where the phone banks were down at the bottom.
Yeah,
like I mean, they're not there. The phones aren't there anymore.
Sure, but
the
color
they might have pamphlets there. Yeah. And you
Uh-huh.
can see where they cut them out and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But I'm like, can you imagine, like, you go in the lobby, well, better let my wife know I made it.
It's funny because
You
like
know what I mean? And now
my first
your
job
your wife can track you, wherever you go.
my first job was at a movie theater, and this is not like
Mm.
in the 90s or 80s.
Mhm.
This was 2003. In
Yep.
2003, there was a line of phone banks,
Yeah.
payphones
Right over
in
there
this
by the exit
movie,
doors.
yes, in the movie theater, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, is this 19? No, this is recent. Like, this is a
Yeah.
modern world. Like, I think people still had cell phones, but they
I
were still a
used
thing.
I used those phones one night because I was driving
Yes.
us and our cousins,
Yep.
and I called to let our grandma know that we were running late
Yeah.
from
That's
those
from
phones.
those
Yeah.
payphones in a movie theater. It's so silly. Like,
Yeah. So
needing
yeah, that's
operators.
the most
I get it.
nostalgia.
I get it.
All right, let's see. Okay, last question.
Okay.
So Jack obviously is going to spend his time at the Overlook, primarily trying to work on his play.
Mhm.
So he's writing the whole time, and then kind of whenever Wendy really figures out, okay, this guy's gone bonkers,
Yeah.
she finds the all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Yes.
Just pages and
Yes.
pages and pages, which isn't in the book. But
Sure.
anyways, writer's block is kind of a
Yes.
big deal, and I think kind of a contributor to his psychosis.
Sure.
So, I know you're a writer for
Yep.
movie blogs and
Yes.
everything like that.
Yes.
So, have you ever tried at something like a play or a book or something like, I mean, extensive?
Not enough to
Not
be like,
not to
not at all. Not at all. No.
say the writing you do is
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's one of those things. It's always the joke of kind of like film criticism in general is like, oh, we're all being film critics until our screenplay gets picked up. It's kind of the half joke. Like I've started a couple things, but I've never
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
committed to it. The funny thing about writer's block is I had a significant amount of writer's block, specifically writing for movies, because I would like stop start. I had no consistency to it, and I was like, okay, well, if I want to do this a lot, I have to actually pick it up and do it consistently. I can't just be like, oh, I'm going to do here, there, and submit to here, and maybe they'll pick it up and all that kind of stuff. And I'd kind of decided, I was like, I need to start writing all the time, but I couldn't bring myself to get the words out. And I watched a movie. It was called Malcolm and Marie. It's on Netflix. It stars Zendaya and John David Washington. I hated it. It was terrible. And that movie let the words flow. I hated that movie so much, and I was just typing away, going like, "This movie
Telling you,
sucks."
wrath is a motivator.
It sucks so hard. I had a great review, and I'm like, I'm back, baby. And I was off from there. I had a long block, probably 6 months of writer's block on that. But no, there's always like, if I had 8 months in a hotel by myself, it'd be one of those things where I would have
kill your wife and kid.
I kill my wife, the kids the first week, and then be like, finally, time to write. And then it's like, oh, I should have waited longer to just like fill the time. But I mean, if I had the time to do it and be like, okay, I'm actually gonna. It's not something. I don't think it's something you can do as like a
side piece.
In theory, it's not something you can just be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna run and right here. And it's like, I think there needs to be some devotion to it. And a lot of people can get lucky by doing that, but I think you would have to dedicate it. But to answer your question, no, I'd never really gotten a full no, I haven't a book or play or anything like that. Always thought of it, have ideas, but never really followed through with it.
Yeah, I had a couple years ago, I had this big idea of writing a book and all this, and I sat down and struggled to get one chapter.
Yeah.
And I hit the end of it and I went, well, we'll never know. It's
know,
deleted. Man, it's writing is hard.
I have
It really is,
I'll tell you what,
especially when you're trying to come out with an original idea,
yes, it's always
like
one
a
of those
brand new story.
well, why would anybody care about this? Like after, and you get down on yourself, you're like, nobody gives a crap about what I write.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you know, there's it's you know, it's that constant self-doubt and that kind of stuff. But I get it. Like, and one day maybe I'll actually finish something, but
Mm.
but most likely it'll always be like half written. It's, you know, 30 pages in of 90 you need, something like that. You know, it's like you're
Yeah.
you're not wrong. Writing's tough. So
yeah.
well
I
done
got
to
faith
everybody
in
out
you,
there.
buddy.
I appreciate that. I still
You're
write
gonna
all-
make it one day.
well, you know, I can knock out a review. It's one thing, but you know,
Hey, nah, you'll be the Stanley Kubrick of.
I don't want to be that insane. So I'll leave that to
All
them.
right,
Yeah.
we'll go to Spielberg. or-
Yeah, sure. I'll do that.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
all right, maybe not. All right, Ben, you're free to go.
I appreciate it, buddy. That is it for the hot box. Before we go, Jake, what is your film rating of The Shining? Is it based off of your book rating or as an independent thing?
So going into this, whenever I re-listened to the book
Yeah.
here just this past week, I went in thinking I can judge the movie as a movie and the book as a book. They are different enough
Yeah.
that you really can do that.
Yeah.
But the more I dug into it and the more I've gotten into the book side of it,
Yeah.
I kind of agree with Stephen King. I'm kind of like, I think Stephen Kubrick fucked this up. But I mean, I love the movie.
On its own.
On its own, I really love this movie. But if you go through the book, I think then you evaluate the movie and say more could have been done here.
Sure.
I don't like the lack of arc with Jack Torrance's character in the movie. I don't think Danny's developed enough as a character in the movie.
Wendy's wrong. Yeah.
But if I just watch the movie, awesome,
makes sense. Absolutely.
Perfect.
And I have not read the book, so I am not tempered by. I know kind of the idea, but I've only known the movie, and I kind of I try to pride myself in the fact that it's like whatever off-screen stuff, whatever everything else is like, whatever is, I try to divorce myself from that.
All right.
And I don't like this person. It's like, let's not worry about that person. Let's act how they is in the movie.
Artists and the
artists. Yes, exactly. So I have a 4.5 out of 5. It's a classic for a reason. It is terrifying, all that kind of stuff. It's one of the best thriller movies of all time. Oh, I wanted to mention one thing I ever forgot. So Kubrick was thinking about casting for Jack Torrance. He had 3 choices. He had Robert De Niro after watching him in Taxi Driver, and he said, nope, not psychotic enough. And then he saw Robin Williams, and he said, nope, too psychotic. And so he settled and he settled on Jack Nicholson.
Wow. You're just trying to find the right level of crazy.
Exactly. Stephen King was looking more along the lines. He wanted Everyman. He wanted Christopher Reeve as Jack. So I mean, you know, kind of in between, but
or he could be the governor of Texas. What? Oh. No, right. I just have one thing.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, so when I was driving home the other day, I was listening to the book. So the book where the naked lady is,
yes,
and then she turns into the dead lady and all that.
Yes.
In the book, it is 2:17.
2:17, not 2:37.
Right.
Okay.
And so I kind of noted that. And while I was driving, I was like, holy fuck. the night before, you know what my room was?
It was 217, wasn't it?
217. And then in the movie, it's 237. I'm like, why would they fuck with that?
It's just
It's
yeah.
217. But I looked it up, and actually where they actually shot this movie,
Yeah.
they didn't want people. There wasn't a 237.
So they
actually.
made up one that is like, oh, I want to
They
say room
made up
237.
one,
There's no
right,
237.
where
Okay.
people wouldn't be freaked out and say,
That
I'm not
makes sense.
staying in there.
That makes sense. It's like the 13th floor of
13th
okay,
floor.
Exactly.
Yep.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
So that's a nice, and that's one of the lasting things. Like you said, there's a documentary called Room 237, all about kind of the things to do with The Shining. You can go seek that out as well if you have it. Yeah. So I mean, well, I'm glad you didn't say in 237, but I'm sorry for 217. I mean, but it's nice to know after
it was
the fact.
fine.
It was nice to know after the fact. Like it was like going into that, that'd be one thing.
At first, she had soft hands, but it
All
got
right.
weird.
I think that just about does it for this episode of the Film Critic, the Common Man. Thank you so very much for joining us. You can follow me on Twitter at nebasben, on Letterboxd at neb810, at Instagram at Ben Miller Movies. Check out my website, Ice Cream for Freaks. You can follow my other writing of the film experience and Cinema Scholars. Got some more reviews coming out. Got there's a movie with Kate Blanchett called Tar. It is about a enigmatic symphony conductor. It is very good. I guarantee anybody like you, Jake, would hate it. So,
Okay.
So yeah, it's good to know. Just in the future. Also got a review of the Korean film Decision to Leave. Good film out there if you want to go seek it out. Jake, where can the people find you?
Room 217.
217, not 37.
I'm in there. No, I'm the original 217, and I'll be in the bathroom.
You can find me on other pods than the David Thewlis podcast, and got another podcast coming out with a buddy of mine, David Rosen, on the Piecing It Together podcast, talking about the Banshees of Inisherin. Go seek out that movie as well. Make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at Critic Common Pod. Please like, subscribe, rate, and review. Enjoy the show wherever you get your podcast. We are back to regularly scheduled programming, not dressed like idiots.
Yeah.
And next week we got talk about nostalgia. It is going to be a nostalgia factory. We are going into The Sandlot, the ultimate baseball boy movie in the middle of the World Series. So, I mean, just hitting every facet. It is going to be a blast. We will catch you guys next time. Thanks so much for joining us.
What's the trick? What's the trick? In making my love stick. What's the trick?